Welcome. I'm Bernice Ross, the CEO and President of realestatecoach.com and Brokerage Up.
My name is Greg McDaniel, and I am with Real Estate Uncensored. It's a very popular podcast, and together, Bernice and I are Real Estate Coach Uncensored.
And you definitely know that Greg's the uncensored part. Now, we're going to be talking about how to attract and create more abundance in your life and in your business. And as we get into the new year, everybody's thinking about, well, what can I do to attract more money? And the first time I trained on this was way back in 1997 to a group of about 200 top producers. And I'm talking about this notion of attraction. And they looked at me, Greg, like I had flown in from Mars.
Mm-hmm. Most people will think that.
Yeah,
if they haven't tried it.
Here we are, fast forward over 2 decades later, and I have seen this work. So what we're sharing about you, this stuff works. There's no woo-woo attached to it. It just, it's like it's like as a psychologist, we have this thing called self-fulfilling prophecy. What you expect to happen will happen. So let's talk about that. So the first principle, the first thing you need to know about attracting more abundance in your life is you attract who you are. And Greg, tell me a little bit about your current client list. Who's showing up in your business right now? And what do they share in common with you?
You know what? The people that are showing up in my business right now, since I'm pivoting slightly into more on the investment side, I'm finding people because I'm manifesting it. I'm finding people that want to sell now. They have liquidity. A lot of our real estate clients, we're helping to sell houses. They're past clients, but I've noticed that there's an overall arching theme of life changes, and more or less there's some sort of pain at some level with all the people I'm working with. And so we found it, maybe they can't afford their home anymore. Maybe that's one of our clients, he owns too many houses, so he needs to sell one. We are seeing that shift, and it's been interesting to watch that change in 2019, when in 18, I didn't really track what that was. And that's bad on Greg. I will start doing more of that so I can answer these questions more efficiently and effectively for you. So sorry.
Never apologize. Because, what you're getting at here is one of the things I found. If you're going through a divorce, you know who you're going to attract?
Divorcees.
Going through a divorce. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things about you attract who you are, if you have someone who's lying to you or is treating you badly, the first question you need to ask is, are you doing that somewhere else in your life? And that's causing you to attract this. Now, if you're not, then the other issue is, did that little voice inside tell you not to work with this person? You should have listened to it. So if you're attracting people who are not in alignment with who you are, say no to them.
Yes.
And especially if you're wanting to upgrade. So what can you do? So let's talk a little bit. So one of the things is, you need to know, you need to know who you want to attract. So, Greg, when you're looking at your ideal client, let's talk about what an ideal client can be. For me, I want someone, I know they can qualify, they're honest, they're going to be fun to work with. They're going to be, we're going to have a great transaction together. They're going to refer people to me. What else would you add to that list?
Loyal to you. That they're not going to shop you and just use, Bob down the street, that's going to give him a fraction of a percent back out of his commission when he didn't really do anything. I would also look for, people that look and act and sound like you so that you can be an authority figure. I learned that lesson very hard when I first got into the business. At 21 years old, I wanted to go work with the people selling multi-million-dollar homes. Well, I could be their child. It did not work out that well in the very beginning. So that's kind of some things I'd add.
Okay, so what we'd like to have you do is make your ideal client list, because it's important that you have clarity about what you want to attract. And I did this when I was coaching. I was doing one-on-one coaching with a lot of individual clients, and I had one of my clients who wanted to attract she wasn't attracting the right men in her life.
Oh, boy.
And what you want to do is you want your ideal client list to be as long as possible. So she goes through all these things, and she attracts the guy who fits every one of those categories. But she forgot to say
Single.
that he wasn't married. He had been, she wanted somebody who was available. He'd been separated from his wife for like 6 years, but he was still married.
Oh
So
my gosh.
this is like being definite with the infinite.
Yes, it is so true. I actually dated a gal that after we were dating, she's like, "Oh, by the way, I'm still married." I'm like, "Oh, what?" And that was a bad scene. But again, hit a lot of boxes. But that one box you got to be very clear on. And I think there's hopefully a lot of you guys have heard of a guy named Darren Hardy. He talked about this quite a lot, to the fact that he wrote, I think, 7 pages of exactly what his future wife, what he want, down to like a style type of hair that she was going to have. But then he turned around and wrote 7 pages of who he is have to be to attract her. And I thought that was very interesting. 1, on the depth of clarity, and 2, on how precise. Because let's be honest, the universe is like our own personal Amazon. We can order anything we want and it can be delivered to us, but you got to really know what you want.
Be definite with infinite. So when you make your ideal client list, keep in mind, if you want someone that's honest, you have to be honest. If you want someone that's fun to work with, you better be fun to work with. So, it's like Darren Hardy says, he have that clarity, 7 pages. Absolutely. Now, the second thing is, I raised this issue. If you've attracted someone who's not right for you, then you didn't set the boundary around who you're willing to work with. So one of my friends that I just love, who's got really clear standards and boundaries, is named Ira Serkis, and he's in Berkeley. And I love Ira because he is so clear about what he wants to, who he's willing to work with. They have to be in a very narrow price range. They have to be within 5 to 10 minutes of, a certain 5-mile radius of where he lives. And they have to be nice. And he had some guy that was yelling at him about not being, about something, why he wouldn't work with him. And Ira said he checked off all these other boxes, but he wasn't a great guy. And that was an issue for him.
Interesting. I think everybody needs to learn what their tolerance level is for multiple different things in life. And then if it's not a fit, like this guy wasn't nice, okay, don't work with him. If he's going to be a jerk. My father actually, he doesn't really get mad, right? But he had a tolerance level with a gentleman that was dropping F-bombs on him and just really, really being just not a good human, right? And my dad just said, "That's it. We're done." And he walked away from the guy with multiple sales. And the guy came back crawling. "I'm so sorry, man. I didn't mean it, blah, blah, blah." And they worked together, but Terry set a boundary and did not deviate either way from it. And you know what? I don't understand why we don't do it more. I believe we're afraid of losing out and losing the dollar and losing the deal and losing whatever we're telling ourselves. But in actuality, aren't you gaining more when you set tolerance levels? Because then you get to work with and spend your time with the right people.
Yeah, well, this is so important. It's like learning to say no to, this notion of establishing a boundary. And I want to draw the distinction between a standard and a boundary. A standard is like, I don't let people swear at me, or, I don't work with people who yell at me. And the boundary is, okay, where do I draw that line where I stop working with that person because that's, they're not who I am. So that's that. I want to go on now, and I have an exercise for you.
Oh boy.
You were talking about tolerances. Okay. Well, one of the things I love about coaching, and Thomas Leonard, who was the founder of business coaching, he said, tolerations are a universal access point for everybody when they start coaching. So the exercise that I've always done with groups is to ask people, what's bugging you right now? So, Greg, what's bugging you today? Anything?
What's bugging me today? I hate Thanksgiving, and I'm glad it's over. And it bothers me to be around Thanksgiving. So,
okay, what else?
It bothers me today that I have to pack and fly to New York and be in a cramped plane.
Okay, so the plane is a toleration. Okay, so that's a toleration, something you put up with too. Okay, what else are you tolerating? Let me give you some examples. So, say I popped a button off my, the second button on my shirt, I popped off, and I'm like trying to cover it up all day because it happened when I said, okay, and I don't take care of that. Or my car needs to be washed. And every time I get my car, I think I take my car to the car wash. I'm too busy. Or it could be I'm in a relationship I shouldn't be in. I'm tolerating the wrong spouse.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one. I had that one time. I got right the second time.
You're like, nah, first one not so much. Second one, all right.
And so but the idea here, when I ask people to write down the things that they're tolerating, those little things that are bugging them, they can usually write down about 20 of them, and then they get stuck. But you actually, almost everybody has at least 100 of them when you start looking at them. Maybe there's a light out in in the front of your house, and you notice it every time you drive up. And what tolerations are, they're like paper cuts. They're not, one of them isn't a big deal. It's the cumulative effect. So to attract more business, what the tolerations are, there are things that are taking space that prevent you from getting new business. Now, you said you're hopping on a plane tomorrow, right? What happens when you plan a vacation? This is like one of the things about real estate. Those who've been around for a long time know that this is absolutely the truth. What happens?
Business falls out of the sky. I mean, it would be the most random things. Like here's a perfect example about this. Next week, we're bringing on a $5 million listing that I found doing cold calls, right? Yeah. I don't know how I got them. But anyways, guess what? I just got a call from a guy who wants to go see it. I'm like, oh, come on. Like, for real? And so those things, and every single time, and if you think I'm kidding, literally book a trip for the next 2 months and watch what happens. It is like the heavens unite, and they're like, oh, Bernice is going on a trip. Let's send her 5 buyers or 5 listing appointments. And you're like, oh, goodness gracious. But it's true to fact.
So this is the notion of creating space. If you want to attract more business, then plan a vacation, clean your closet, clean the trunk of your car,
So true.
Get clean, give away stuff that you don't need. And this works. I've done this exercise so many times, and just every time I make a deliberate attempt to give a bunch of stuff and clothes and get rid of old stuff, guess what? More business shows up. So it's like creating the space. And, if you've got a dirty garage, if your garage is packed to capacity, the analogy is, or you got an old, just kind of crummy car there's no room for that shiny red convertible if you don't clear out the garage. So what you're doing by clearing out tolerations is you're clearing out that space to be able to attract more in your business.
That makes a lot of sense. So you're saying, like, if I want to get more business, and I got a closet full of clothes, I think I wear maybe 5% of those clothes. So I take 95% of all these shoes and pants and shirts and everything else and just give them away. You're telling me that business is going to flow in like the River Nile?
I tell you what, why don't you try it and see?
I will. Trust me. I'm going to clean out everything.
Have this conversation on another show.
God, I hope that's right. I can't wait for this to work.
It works. I've done it. I mean, it works. So, and this comes back. So you've got the space. You want to be clear again. And we talked about this at the beginning of the show about what you're going to put into that space. And that's where you want to have that ideal client list. Mm-hmm. And those of you who are looking for a partner, you can do that. I love the 7 pages, that you talked about. That works too. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is this notion of giving back. And the idea here is the more you give back, the more that comes back to you, because you attract who you are. So, and I think Brian Buffini likes to say this, what happens when you give to a giver, they give back. True. And if you think about it, so say that you went out and served, served food at a food kitchen on Thanksgiving, or, you do that regularly. It's the act of giving that causes this to come back to you. Now, the place where you're going to get the abundance may not be it's not necessarily the person that you gave to, but it shows up elsewhere. And I see you nodding. Can you got some examples?
Oh, big time. I mean, it is unbelievable. I started the podcast Real Estate Uncensored about 4 years ago, and it came from a point of my life where I was frustrated because I saw so many agents that were being basically kept from their dream to do real estate because they had to go past the paywall, and I was fed up. I'm like, that's freaking done, dude. And so I started giving all of me to everybody around me, and I've made tremendous relationships. I've heard dozens, if not dozens, I don't know, there's probably hundreds, if not more, stories of people literally broke and then now they own their own brokerages, or someone wanted to change their life. And it's because I just gave freely of my knowledge and my time. And I did a thing called the McDaniel Challenge for a while. And what it was, I'll give you a free hour of coaching, Monday through Thursday, book a time and let's go. Right. I was putzing along there. It's 1 to 2 months booked out. So I thought I was doing pretty good. I don't know what happened, but in literally one day I was booked out for a year and a half. Wow. Then I shut it down. I'm like, okay, you guys are idiots if you guys are seriously going to wait for a year and a half. Like 99% of them did make the appointments, but it was because I was just giving of myself, and I've had business opportunities that have come to me because of the generosity. And everybody laughed at me and said, "Oh man, you're giving away your time. You got to charge them at least $100." I'm like, that's the point, is to give and not ask for anything in return. And like you said, you're probably not going to get from the people you gave to, most likely. I mean, you might, but it's going to come in a totally different way. It's going to completely fulfill your needs and wants that will radically transform your life. But people don't understand. They still think that I have to get something before I give something. When you actually, you have to give something before you get something.
It is, think of an infinity sign. It's giving and getting, and also it's being that willing to receive. So that give back piece is so incredibly important. And then the last one is the attitude is gratitude. I've trained a number of coaches when I was on the faculty at Coach U. And one of the things, one of the classes I was leading, one of them was called spirituality. And one of the coaches said, how can I ask God for more when I don't appreciate what I already have? And it is so easy to get caught up. And especially, I worked in Beverly Hills, Brentwood, Bel Air. You get caught up in that whole trash and flash and glitz and glitter, and you got to have a certain look, and you got to have the new Jag every couple of years. I mean, I did have the guard gated community, built my own house when I was single. Had all those things, and I was miserable because I was focused on what I didn't have rather than what I did have. Yeah. So, one of the things that I found that really works is keeping a gratitude journal. And, one of the things I do before I go to sleep every night, I've gotten a habit. What are 10 things that I'm grateful for? From today. And I've had a lot of my friends, a number of my friends say when they get up in the morning, say, what do I want to have? They look at today is, what are they ask where I can be of service, or they ask, going into today, what, how can I best use my time? Again, this notion of being a service, but again, it's coming back and saying, thank you, or here's, thank you for a good night's sleep, God, or how, whatever your belief system is. Again, this is about, giving back and having gratitude for what you have, because where our unhappiness comes is when we get focused on what we don't have.
Yeah.
And, it's like, well, there's always somebody who's going to be richer, younger, more beautiful, more this, more that. And you were talking about this a little bit ago, this notion of people who are, who are takers. And, and then the other people are telling you, well, you're crazy to do this. Well, they're looking at, the notion is here is, and I want to come back to this idea of maybe being in exchange. So if I'm giving to a client who's not giving me anything back, I do need to fire them. So, but where we get out of whack is when there's not reciprocity. So one of the things, so for example, if, you and I go out to have dinner, and I say, Greg, let me pick this up. And you go, oh, hey, I can get it. Or, hey, we can split it. That breaks down this chain of giving and receiving. So you need to say thank you, Yeah. And so that, because when someone gives, then that allows them to receive. So you want to be able to do both of those. Yeah. I don't know if you have anything to add to that or not.
Actually, that's something that uniquely interesting. The gal that I'm dating, when we first got together, I was, the gentleman, and I would pay for dinners. And then she looked at me one day, she goes, all right, we've been together for long enough. That's the ends. This is ridiculous. We're now going to bounce back and forth. And so she and I bounce back and forth on buying wine or buying meals or whatever else. And it's like, hey, it's my turn. She's like, no, you bought last time. It's my turn. And so we go through this, and it is very rewarding and fulfilling to have that give and take. You feel equally good as getting as you do in giving, because you know you're bringing joy to the other person, or bringing value, or bringing some sort of service that's going to be a value plus to them. A lot of people, and I was very hard about receiving for a long period of time because I felt guilty about it, or whatever else is going on, right? And when you let that go, all of a sudden wonderful things happen, because you even receive more joy in your life. So I'm living that experience right now.
Well, that is so true. One of the things that comes up for me too, and I want to go back to this notion of giving back. Giving back doesn't have to be you are going to write a check or you're going to spend a lot of time doing something, but it can be, and I love this analogy, it can be giving someone a smile. A smile is a virtual hug, because when you smile at someone and they smile back at you, they get a beta endorphin release, which makes them feel better. And sometimes that smile or that laughter or that little piece that you gave them at that moment in time may be the only thing that made them feel good all day long. You don't know what they're going through. So again, get in the habit, and be, attitude is gratitude. Look at that wait person who clears your table. Look, say thank you when they drop off, the food. It's like, get in the habit of acknowledging and just, and if you had, I had a meal a few weeks ago. That's one of the ones I order, and they just really kind of screwed it up. But, and I did say something to the wait, to the wait person. She sent the manager over, and I'd had this absolutely marvelous cappuccino that morning, though, at the same place. And I said, I had this fantastic cappuccino. It turns out the manager was the one who had made it. So let's just say thank you, but there was an issue with this. So again, expressing gratitude, but also be clear, people want to know when they want to know how they can get better. That's, kind of the takeaway.
Yeah, and I heard a story the other day, and it's true. I mean, if you have a roof over your head, you are listening and watching this show, and you have food in your belly, you're doing better than a large portion of the people in this world. And there's this graph that I saw, not a graph, but a picture, and it was, and there was a guy in a wheelchair looking at a guy that was walking, and he said, "Gosh, I wish I had legs." The guy was walking, saw a guy in a car, and said, "Man, I wish I had a car." The guy in the car saw a nicer car, like a Ferrari. He says, "Man, I want that Ferrari." The guy in the Ferrari was looking at a helicopter and goes, "I want the helicopter." And you're always going to be looking at what having a goal is not a bad thing. It's a very powerful thing to have a goal, but it's bad to disregard what you currently have, even though if it's not the most incredible thing. Let's see, if you're driving a busted Honda Civic right now. Dude, you got a car, man, and you have the ability to get better from where you are. If you broke your leg, you really understand how valuable it is to walk. All right. And so I think what Bernice and I are saying here is just enjoy being in the now with what you have. Now, if life isn't perfect, that's okay. But here's the reason why, because you're in the process of achieving more. That's what your mindset needs to be. Like, gosh, I'm really thankful for this Honda Civic that I have, but I know that I'm in the process of achieving more. And it's believe in that. And I was talking to a guy named Jeff Latham, agent, really good guy. I call him the Buddha of real estate. He's so zenned out. I love the guy. But this man, you want to talk about attracting things into your life. I had him on my podcast, and he talked about the fact that, he couldn't achieve things because he will review his goals every hour, right? At the top of every hour, an alarm goes off, right? And I said, "Well, how do you get there?" He's like, "Well, Greg, if you're trying to get from this point to this point, what's the fastest line?" And fastest way, I'm like, "A straight line." He's like, "No, why don't you just bend the paper? Bring the tips in closer." And I'm like, "How do you do that?" He's like, consistently reminding your subconscious of where you want to be, but being thankful for being in the present. And so I have literally watched him. His team was doing 400 transactions. He whittled them down to just 2 people to do 40 to 50 now. He bought himself this big old yacht. His next goal, he's running marathons up hills. And his next goal is a helicopter, right? But they're big and ostentatious, but they're coming true to his life because he's reviewing his goals on a consistent basis. He knows where he wants to go. And so I said, well, how can I do that in my life? And don't disregard the chicken scratch if you can see this. But this is something I write on every single one of my pages of my yellow pad. And it goes like this: I'm thankful and grateful for the immense financial wealth that I have built for myself in such a short amount of time while living the life of my dreams and helping others live the life of their dreams. Now, I push that out every day, and I'm seeing beautiful, incredible things come back to me because, and I also have a much more detailed one, but this is the one I read several times a day. So, what is something that you can be grateful for and thankful for, and where do you want to go with it? Because you're in the process of achieving it.
I think that's a great place to wrap up. I'm Bernice Ross, the CEO and president of Brokerage Up and realestatecoach.com. We've been talking about how to attract abundance, and Greg, what a great example to end with.
Thanks, Bernice. You guys, my name is Greg McDaniel, McDaniel, if I can say my own name. I am the co-founder and co-host of Real Estate Uncensored, one of the hottest podcasts. So if you want to get some great information, feel free and check me out there. Together, Bernice and I are the Real Estate Coach Uncensored.
Thanks for being with us today.
Bye, guys.